We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 43b. On the previous Amid, the Gemara was discussing the Mishnah in Meseches Rosh Hashanah, which says that Rebbe Gamliel had images of the moon in his attic, which he would use when witnesses would come to testify about the new moon. He would use those images to ask them, did you see the moon? Did it look like this? Did it look like that? And the Gemara asked, how could it be that he had these images of the moon? The Gemara brought a brais on the previous Amid, which said that you're not allowed to make images hamishamshin lafanai b'maram, of attendants that serve me up high, that serve me in the heavens, and that would seemingly include things like the sun and the moon. So how could Rebbe Gamliel have these images in his attic? And the Gemara now continues and answers, Lo Asra Torah, the Torah only forbid, Ella bitmus dalid ponim bahadei adodi. It's the image of the four faces that are all together. Rashi explains, Arbo aponim pinei shor v'odem v'aryeh v'nesher. This was the face of an ox and a person and a lion and a nesher, which is generally translated as an eagle. L'chaya achas, for one creature, for one animal. Dugmas chayus hakodesh. That was similar to what's called the chayus hakodesh. Techsiv iti, because we're learning it from the pasuk which says the images that are with me. Hashrios etzli, which are by me. That's the specific image b'morom, which is problematic. The demus dalid ponim b'hadei hadodi. But the Gemara says, according to that, but according to that, if the image is only when you have all four faces on one creature, so parts of Adam l'chudei tishtri, so it should be permitted to make just the face of a man. We already quoted earlier that that's problematic. Allah Tanya, why did we learn in a brisa? Kol hapartsufos mutar nechutz min parts of Adam. All faces are permitted to make, except for the face of a man. So you see from there that the face of a person alone is prohibited to make. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rav Yehuda Bereid Rav Yoshua. Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Yoshua, says, Mi pirkei Rav Yoshua shmi ali, from the lectures of Rav Yoshua, I heard, Lo sasun iti. It's because the pasuk says Lo sasun iti, but we darshan that as Lo sasun osi. Don't make images that are like me. The idea over here is that people were made in the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it's a specific prohibition to make these images of a person's face. And the Gemara continues, Avol shar shamoshin shari, but other kinds of attendants you're going to make, those are going to be permitted again, and so the point is, the moon would not be problematic. But the Gemara still continues and asks, Ushar Shamoshin Mishari, but other kinds of attendants on high, are those really permitted? Meaning you're saying that it's only the Demus Dalid Ponim Bahadei Hadodi that's problematic. V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Lo Sasun Iti, again from the pasuk of Lo Sasun Iti, Lo Sasun Kedmus Shamosha Hamishamshin Lefanai B'Morim. You can't make like the image of the attendants that serve me on high. Kagon, and we give other examples, Ofanim, Usrafim, V'chayos HaKodesh, U'malachei Asharis, all of these various kinds of angels are prohibited, and so if we're including all these other kinds of things, apparently something like the sun and the moon would actually be prohibited as well. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Abaya says, Lo Asra Torah, Ela Shamoshin Shebemodar Ha'elyon. The Torah only said it was prohibited if they were in the Modar Ha'elyon, which is the area on high that was up above. There was a Modar Ha'elyon, an upper area, and a Modar Hatachton. There's a lower area in the heavens, and so therefore it's only the ones in the Modar Ha'elyon, as Rashi says, Shebemodar Ha'elyon, K'dechsiv E.T. It has to be like it's written with me. Avolchama ulavana, the sun and the moon, b'madar hatachtonheim. They're in the lower part, the lower section, so to speak, of the heavens, and so therefore that would be permitted. That's why it wasn't a problem for Rebbe Gamliel. But the Gemara still continues and asks, V'sheb'madar hatachton mishari, is it really permitted in the lower area of the heavens? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Asher b'ashamayim, it says in the heavens, l'rabos chama ulavana kochavim umazolos, to include the sun and the moon and the stars and the constellations, and mimal, and when it says the word mimal in the pasuk, l'rabos malachei asharis, that includes the angels. And so you see the sun and the moon are included in the prohibition. And the Gemara says to that, Kitanyu ahi, what is that brisa referring to? It's not referring to making the images, it's la'ovdam, it's to serve those images. But the Gemara says, Ila ovdam, but if it's to serve the images, afilu shilshul katanami, even a small worm you're not allowed to serve. And the Gemara says, Inachinami, the Gemara says, yes, indeed, that's true. And that also comes from the same pasuk, Miseifa dekra nafka. That's learned out from the end of that pasuk. The Tanyas we learned in a brisa, Asher ba'aretz, the pasuk goes on to say, those that are on the land. L'rabos yomim v'naharos, to include seas and rivers, haram ugavos, to include mountains and valleys, and mitachas, when it says in the pasuk mitachas, l'rabos shilshul katan, to include the small worm. And so therefore, again, the pasuk is actually talking about worshiping. It's not talking about making these images. And so we still do not have a question suspicion on Rabbi Gamliel. But the Gemara continues and asks, Vasiya graded tamishari, but do you think that making a loan is permitted? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, lo sasun iti, again the same pasuk, lo sasun iti, lo sasum kidmus shamosha hemeshamshin lefana b'morim, don't make like the images of the attendants that serve me on high. And here in this brisa it gives examples, kigon chama ulevana kochavim umazolos, for example, like the sun and the moon and the stars and the constellations. Here clearly the brisa says images of the moon are problematic. And so the Gemara instead answers, Shani Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel is different. Ta'acherim asulo, because he didn't make it, others made it for him. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'har Rav Yehuda, but what about Rav Yehuda? Ta'acherim asulo. That also, there was a similar situation. Others made it for him. V'yamar le Shmuel, Rav Yehuda, and Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinana, sharp one, Sami eine dedain, you have to remove the eyes of this image. It's problematic, even though someone else made it for him. And the Gemara said to that, no, the Gemara says to that, no, Hasam over there, that was a specific situation, B'chosama bole, there it was like a ring, and the seal, it was protruding, and when it's protruding, you have more of a concern. Umishum chashada, because there's actually was a concern. Maybe people would suspect that he's serving it as an idol. Titanias, we learned in a brisa, tabasha chosama bolet, if you have a ring and the seal is protruding, asr la'nicha, it's forbidden to wear that ring, because again, protruding is something people might think you're worshiping it as Avoda Zara. Umutar la'achsomba, and you're actually allowed to use it as an actual seal, to imprint a seal, because then the image that you're making is actually going to be, it's not going to be protruding, it's going to be the opposite, it's going to be sunk in. And then the brisa continues, chosama shokeya, it's exactly the opposite. Let's say the ring that you have, so let's say the image is actually sunken in, so mutter lahanicha, then you're actually allowed to wear it because it's not protruding. V'yasser lachsam, but you wouldn't be allowed to make an imprint with it because then the image that you're creating is actually protruding again, which is more problematic. But the Gemara continues and asks, but now you're saying that if others make it, the only time you're going to have a problem is if we have a suspicion that you're serving. But are we really concerned with suspicions? But there was a synagogue in Eretz Yisrael which was destroyed and reset up in Nahar Doi, to Ukmi Bey in Derata, that they put over there a statue of the king. And the father of Shmuel and Levi, they went in there, and they would daven over there. And the Gemara says, there was no concern of suspicion that people would think they were worshipping it. And the Gemara says to that, Rabbim Shani, that was something that was in public. The public is different. There we don't have such suspicion. But the Gemara continues and asks, Rabbi Gamliel, but still, Rabbi Gamliel, the Yochid have it. Rabbi Gamliel was an individual, and now you're saying there is a concern of suspicion, a concern of chashad, so why by the images of the moon? Maybe we should have that concern by Rabbi Gamliel. And the Gemara says to that, Kevan de Nasihu, since Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi, he was the president, Shchichi Rabim Gabe, the public was by him a lot, it was a public area, and that's why there's no concern of suspicion. And so again, the reason why it was okay to have those images of the moon was because others made it for him. And the Gemara continues with another answer why it was okay for Rabbi Gamliel to have these images. V'ibay same, if you want, I could say the prakim havoy, that these images of the moon, they were made of separate pieces that you would put together. There was no whole image of the moon. It was broken up into different pieces. Again, that you would assemble those into the image of a moon. So that's okay. And the Gemara continues with another answer. V'ibay same, if you want, I could say lehislam mitshani, that if it's doing it, if you have these images for learning purposes, it's okay. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, lo silmad lasos, you can't learn in order to do. But if you're learning in order to understand, that's okay. And again, this was for educational purposes, so to speak, and that's why it is okay. And Rashi explains, Da'acherim masulo, again by Rabbi Gamliel, others made these images for him, Ovdei Kochavim, and the ones who made it, they were Ovdei Kochavim, they were idolaters. Rabbi Yehuda Da'acherim masulo, but what about Rabbi Yehuda? Others made for him Tzura betabas shal yaminiach. This was an image in a ring that he had. And Sami Eini Dedain, he said you have to remove the eyes, Pechus Sarasu, you have to deform the image, and you have to ruin that image. And Chashad, and the reason for that was suspicion, Shlo Yomru Lahu Oved, people shouldn't think that he's worshipping it. And again, Chosam is Surasa, that's the image of the seal. Umutter Lachsamba, then the Gemara mentioned you're allowed to use it. Again, you're allowed to use it to imprint upon the wax. Keshu Chosem Shokei HaChosem B'Shava, because if the ring is protruding, so then when you use it to create the image on the wax, it's going to be sunken in. Ve'eno Nira Mimi B'Chutz, it won't be protruding over there, and so that's why it's okay. And then the reverse, Chosma Shokeya, let's say the seal itself is sunken, Asr Lachsam, so then he's not allowed to use it to create the seal. To Keshu Chosem have a Chosma Bolik, because then again, when he presses it, that image that's going to be created is going to be protruding. protruding. And Rashi notes, the Gemara is about to ask later on by Rabbi Gamliel also, why aren't we concerned with suspicion that he's worshiping it? And then the Gemara talked about the synagogue, the Shaf v'Yosef. Rashi's first explanation is Shem Makom Shaya b'Medinas Nahardoi. This was just the name of the place in Nahardoi. V'Yesh some say Yechonya v'Galuso Natlu Iman me'Avne Yerushalayim me'Afara uvanuhu Sham. Some say that Yechonya and those who were exiled with him, they took the stones of Yerushalayim, brought it there in order to build the synagogue. V'Hainu the Shaf v'Yosef ben Nahardoi Nishav Kan b'Nis Yashiv Kan. Again, it was taken from here and it was settled over there. In Duratas Tzelem, again in Duratas like a statue. And the Gemara said, Rabbi Gamliel again, Rabbi Gamliel was an individual, so with these images of the moon, we should be concerned of suspicion. And Rashi continues, the Prakim, again, the moon was made of pieces, Shel Chulias, again, it was made of different pieces that were assembled. He would only put it together at the time he's examining the witnesses. He didn't see it every day, therefore, there's no suspicion. Rashi's understanding that when the Gemara answers the Prakim, that's an answer to the idea that there should be suspicion that he's serving it. There's no problem, there is no suspicion that he's serving it if it's never assembled except at the time of the examination of the witnesses. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer v'chul. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel said, only images on vessels that are respectable are prohibited, but if it's on disgraceful vessels, so then it's not prohibited. And the Gemara says, Ezuhein mechubadin ve'ezuhein mevuzin. What's considered a respectable vessel? What's considered a disgraceful vessel? Amar Rav. Rav says, mechubadin. What does it mean respectable? It just means lamala min hamayim. Let's say you have a vessel that holds water, so if it's above the water level where the image is, that's respectable. Mevuzin, disgraceful, is lamata min hamayim. If it's below the level of the water and that part of the vessel, that's disgraceful. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, Eilu ve'elu mevuzanein. Those are both considered to be disgraceful because this is just a vessel that holds water, it holds food, that's considered to be mevuzin. Ela eilu hein mechubad, and rather what's considered a respectable vessel, shal hashirin ve'al hanizamin ve'al hatabos. Let's say it's on something like bracelets or on nose rings or rings. Those are respectable kalim. Tanya Kavase the Shmuel, we have a brisa that supports Shmuel. Mechubadin, what's considered respectable, shal hashirin ve'al hanizamin ve'al hatabos, if it's on bracelets or nose rings or rings. And mevuzin, what's considered disgraceful, shal hayoros, if it's on these large pots, ve'al hakum kamasin, or if it's kettles, ve'al mechamechamim, or let's say things that are used to heat up water or tea, ve'shal hasadinan, or let's say it's on sheets, Vial hametfachos, or on towels, those are all considered to be disgraceful. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Rabbi Yossi says, Shochek v'zora l'ruach. When you find an idol, you should grind it up and throw it to the wind. O meto l'yam, or throw it to the sea. Amrulo, they said to him, Afu nasa zevel. That also you can get a benefit from that because it will become like fertilizer. It's good for the earth. Shenemar, and as it says in the pasuk, Lo yidbak b'yodcha mu'uma min hacherem. You can't take anything from the cherem, and therefore any kind of benefit is prohibited. Rashi explains, V'zora l'ruach, you throw it into the wind, Shlo yikashel bo Yisrael, lehanos mimana, you're doing this so that a Jew shouldn't stumble over it and benefit from it. And then the response was, Afhu, im yizrena l'ruach, if you throw it to the wind, Gamato yeshadna mimana, then also you'll be able to derive benefit from it as fertilizer. And the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in a brayso, Amar lahem Rabbi Yossi said to them, V'alo kvar nemar, doesn't it already say in the pasuk, there's a pasuk in Sefer Devarim, it says, Nemar, it says, V'eschataschem, and your sin, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Dalid Amud Aleph.